Support for the community programming is provided by the Dunkin' Donut shops of Westfield and the Sardina family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Listen to me, Michael Buster McMahon, Mondays 8 to 10 a.m. to learn the stories behind your favorite songs. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you.
Community Radio.
107.5 FM WSFD. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 107.5 FM WSFD LP Westfield.
It's around the corner now. Don't you love it? All right. At home where I wanna be, wrapped pressed by the Christmas tree. With my baby, it's just my baby and me. Got the little one stuffed in bed. She's Santa run through their head. So happy, it's so much fun to believe. Julian wants a rocking horse. My daughter Jessie wants a doll that talks. Little Joy wants a BB gun. Mama has saying just too young, just too young. Everybody loves Christmas. Everybody has fun. That time of the year, that holiday cheer, a good time for everyone. Everybody loves Christmas. I'm counting the ways. You know it's almost here. Well, Christmas Day, Christmas Day. Checking on my list, I'm almost done. Had to buy a gift for everyone. It don't matter, it's just that time of the year. Alright. I spend the money and I don't look back. Maybe even wake up in a Cadillac. The man told me, said, don't worry, I'm here. Everybody in the neighborhood got the houses looking really good. All your wounds kinda disappear. It all happened more than once a year. More than once a year. Everybody loves Christmas. Everybody has fun. That time of the year, all the holiday cheer. A good time for everyone. Everybody loves Christmas. I'm counting the days. You know it's almost here. Well, Christmas Day. Christmas time.
Everyone loves Christmas. It's that time of the year when the little kids cheer.
Everybody loves Christmas. Everybody has fun.
It's that time of the season. It's their time to have fun. Oh, 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 oh.
Everybody loves Christmas. Everybody has fun. That time of the year, oh, the holiday cheer. A good time for everyone.
Everybody loves Christmas, and I'm counting the way. You know it's almost here for Christmas Day.
You know it's almost here for Christmas Day. And now it's finally here for Christmas Day. Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day. Almost Christmas Day.
Everyone loves Christmas.
That's a good lead in.
Isn't it? Doesn't that get you into the holiday spirit or what? Here we are. Everything Southwick for December 2025. Last show of the year for us.
Yep.
Wow. It goes by so fast.
Yeah, actually it does.
Are you ready for the holidays?
Sort of. I don't know. It's just this is like the busiest season for a public access, I guess.
Yes. I'll bet it is. Everybody's schedule's crazy. Everybody wants to do stuff. And
Yeah.
there's all kinds of special events and things
Last
going on.
minute.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, by the way, can you do this tomorrow?
Sure.
No.
Yes, right. We've been planning it for months, though. Well, As they used to say on the planning board, lack of planning on your part does not create an emergency on my part.
Yes,
But,
I gave that to the chief of police once in Westfield as a Christmas gift. And Chief Camerata put it behind his desk.
It's so true. It's so true. Oh my.
I had the 104th Fighter Wing call me and said, "Hey, the 31st or the 30th or something, can we do an interview with the new base commander?" Yep, no problem. I'm available. Brady's available. Let's bring the truck. 5 minutes later, it was like, he can't do it. 23rd. No. I'm not available. Brady might be available, but the truck is not available because I have a shoot in the I got to shoot in the studio that right at that same time. Like if you could move it an hour or two, we might be able to pull that off. But no.
Yeah, that's my goal, is to pull off that trick of where you can be in 2 places at the same time. 3 would be better, but 2 would be sufficient to cover the schedule.
Apparently, people think because of my size, I can split myself in 2.
Oh Lord.
Come on, that was funny.
I know it is, but
I laugh at myself. It's not a big deal. Yeah. So anyway,
So who are you? You're Peter Cowell.
I'm Peter Coles.
Coles.
Yep.
I'm Doug Moglen. This
Yep.
is Everything Southwick. Here we are for December, and we got a lot going on. I guess you always think the holiday season things kind of slow up rolling into the new year. No such luck.
No, you're busy over there.
Yeah, we've been busy. We got a town meeting coming up in January, special town meeting, and it's going to be an interesting one. I think there's at least 4 articles on the warrant. We closed the warrant on Monday. And I think it's 4 proposed articles on there. The first one is the big one. We talked about it at our last show, is to give the town the ability to go above 50% on the health insurance, right? Right now we pay half, the employee pays half. And we're going to try to look at, different ways that we can increase that, right? Whether it's through, straight up we just pay more, straight up we come up with better, different plans that we're able to cover more of, other innovative solutions to try to do that. It's become, it's everywhere. I mean, we talked about this ad nauseum last show, but, it's everywhere. Health insurance costs are rising faster than anything,
The
really.
budgets can keep up with it, right?
Budgets and people's budgets too, right? And how are we going to work that? How are we going to retain employees? How are we going to recruit employees? Then the retention piece is huge. We've made a big investment in these people, in training and learning and getting them to come to us in the first place. And, we don't want to lose them.
Well, and the compact has always been for public service employees. Is generally you make less than you would in the private sector, but the flip side of that was the benefits are usually better, so it would even out.
Yep. And it's not as true, in my opinion, it's not as true as it used to be.
Yeah.
But because the market is so competitive now that you're competing with everyone else for the same employees in certain roles,
Especially the specialized ones.
Yeah, but everywhere. I guess I wouldn't even categorically just say these people or that people or whatever. It's everywhere. It used to be. I think you and I have talked about this. Maybe it was off air, but it was many years ago, right? The public sector person made, a percentage of what someone in the dreaded private sector made. But
Right.
there was this covenant that, hey, we're going to take care of you. There's a pension, there's retirement, and so on and so forth. But what's happened over time is that, wages in the public sector have risen to be competitive with the private sector. And you still have, and we could talk for 19 hours about, the Hampden County retirement and or other state-funded retirement plans and what the deficits are there and, what the promises being made to employees that are starting tomorrow that are unfunded, and how is that all going to play out in 25, 30, 45 years from now? I don't have a crystal ball on that, but it's a huge problem. Some cities and
It's
towns,
a kick the can down the road problem.
100%. And, every year we make a contribution to OPEB, other post-employment benefits, at town meeting of like $15,000 or $20,000 or whatever.
Which
it
is a token.
Oh my gosh, it's not even throwing
That was-
a pebble into the Atlantic Ocean and looking for the ripple, right?
That was Dave Flaherty's big thing in Westfield for
Oh yeah,
ever.
and it should be. I mean, I think some of these places, it's billions of dollars of unfunded benefits, billions. And even in Westfield, it's many, many, many millions.
Yep.
Southwick is millions. We've seen the forecasts of when we're covered and when we're not, and when what that's going to mean for our retirees. People are living longer. People make decisions around their retirement as to how they're going to fund their retirement and what their survivor benefits look like, if any, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of math to that. But the back to the reality of where we are right now is on the insurance side. Some of our employees, their insurance bill is bigger than their mortgage payment. And we've been driving at, one of the things that from the master plan was, and other initiatives within the town is how do we get more of our town employees to be able to afford to live in our town?
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother thing too to try to boil down. Is there a tax plan you can come up with for that? Is there an affordable homes plan you can come up with that? They
That's
did do
really
a
tough
housing
in a
plan.
small town too.
Oh, it is really tough. And you look at the housing stock and you look at the economics of new construction, and again, not an expert in this space, but I've talked to enough builders, and if you're building a house on, your lots are going to be this big, your development cost is this, your environmental cost to get to development is this. You can't build a $200,000 house. It's impossible, right? You can't build a $300,000 house.
Yeah.
It's impossible. And to put up a 1,500 square foot house or a 2,000 square foot house versus a 3,500 square foot house, the material cost is not huge, right? It's not a big difference. So what do? They put up the bigger house. They get more money. And that's not to say that it seems condescending or contrived to say everybody should live in a fireman or a police officer or someone who works in the DPW should live in this kind of house. No, but you look at the entry level wage of where those folks are coming in, and then what the affordability index, and then you pile insurance onto that, and it's insurmountable. And you look at our police department now as an example, because I was having a long talk with somebody on the ride back from Amherst the other day after police academy graduation. And we have a very young department, fire department too, very young department. They're all, we've grown the department, we've had retirements and so on and so forth. So they're, our police contract is a fair one and it's a good one. Our younger officers get to a higher step faster than a lot of our surrounding communities, but still within the parameters of what it pays. The health insurance is a big burden.
Yep.
And so we're going to try to look at ways to address that. But we need to go to town meeting.
Because it becomes a funding issue.
That, and it's a law. We actually have a law that it's 50-50. And so in order to
so it's
go
an
above that,
ordinance? Yeah.
we need to have a vote of town meeting to give us the ability to go above that. And we don't even know what that is yet, right? But even to go to 50.5, we need town meeting approval to lift that cap. Then we negotiate with the unions and with other town employees on what this is. Then we go back in May, we'll come back with a budget, right, which also has to be passed at town meeting. And I've said it ad nauseum, right? But the budget is policy. So it's not just, numbers on a piece of paper, it's policy. So if you decide to increase health insurance as a percentage, well, that gets into the budget. If
Sure,
town
yeah.
meeting votes to accept the budget, they've then voted to ratify that policy that you're trying to get done. It's the same thing if you're trying to add an employee. The fire department added a few employees last year. It doesn't show up on a warrant article, please approve hiring 3 new firefighter medics, right? It's in the employment line item and the 4 other or 8 other line items, from uniforms to insurance to you name it, that we have to put in the budget to fund ahead.
To increase it, yeah.
But when you vote on the budget, when you vote to approve the budget, you just voted to hire those 3 firefighters, right? So same thing goes if you eliminate a position. You don't just have a warrant article that says, oh, we're going to eliminate this position. No, you
Just
zero
unfund
the
it.
line item
Yeah.
for that head in that budget. And when you vote on that, you've basically taken the legislative action to execute that policy. So that's part and parcel. So the first step is we have to go in front of town meeting to explain what we're doing,
What you wanna
we're
do,
doing,
yeah.
potentially what it could cost. There's going to have, I understand there's going to be a presentation. I haven't seen it yet, but there's supposed to be a presentation to town meeting.
Or
to
somebody
say,
finally asked Joe about that? Because as of last week, nobody had asked him yet.
it's a state secret, apparently.
Apparently.
I don't need to know.
Joe's like, I don't think anybody's asked me about that yet.
Nope, and-
he says he was trying to anticipate that.
Because right now it's not it is obviously it's a financial question, but it's not a direct financial question. I guess you could put a dollar sign around each percentage point and go, okay, for every 1% we go up, this is the dollar amount at our current insurance rates. But I don't know that that's the whole answer to the question.
No,
I
it's
think,
not.
And kudos to the town employees. They came in front of the select board and said, we want you to call a special. We want you to ask the townspeople this question. And we said, okay, we'll do that. And we kind of went off on a side conversation about insurance plans and what other types of plans are out there. And, they basically pulled me aside and said, look, that's all secondary. We want to get, we need to get
We
you
need
to
to
lift
lock
the
this
cap
in
and
first,
and
yeah.
then figure out how we're going to pay for it and how we're going to do it. And we want to be a partner to do that. They understand that, every dollar that we raise comes from the property tax predominantly, right? And how that's going to work. And they realize that's going to come from the taxpayers in the town of Southwick. It doesn't just fall from the sky. And so everyone's cognizant of that. We just need to figure it out. And we need to do that. We need to get past, we need to go to town meeting and get this approved. We have to, and then, but again, every dollar we spend goes through town meeting as policy.
Yeah, right,
So
it has to, yeah.
There's a check and a balance. So I guess the question to the finance committee at this point is, it's not really a financial question
Yeah.
immediate. It's going to be a financial discussion during budget season, and as we go to and prepare the budget documents for town meeting, and everyone has a role to play. So I think, I encourage everybody to come forward and join us in this discussion to figure out how we're going to do it, right? Because I think it's important.
But it's good that they're in early, though. They should be in early because it's going to impact what they do and how they think
sure.
and their mindset going into budget season.
Right. And, we've been working, we've had our insurance through the Hampshire Trust forever, and we need to look at that. That's, that mechanism probably isn't working for us at the moment. And they know it, and they've been recalcitrant to give us they call it the MLRs, right, the medical loss ratio, so we can shop our insurance around, because the only reason you ask to get a copy of your MLRs is so you can give it to someone else to get a quote. And, so there's been all kinds of politics and bureaucracy around that. And, we have options around that. But, getting away from the mechanics of just the health insurance itself is we need to go to town meeting, we need to have this vote. And figure out how to do it. We did it, I don't remember the year, but it was several years ago, more than several now, and it didn't pass. So we need to, if we're going to have this flexibility, we need to get this article past the town meeting. If it doesn't pass, well, then we're right where we are.
Sure, yeah.
And we'll have to deal, I don't want to deal with the repercussions of that because, like I said, I think it's a big retention issue, right? We've lost people already. Frankly speaking, we've lost several people already on the insurance issue, or the insurance issue was a significant issue. There's been, you have turnover, it happens, right? We've had also, some other turnover in town hall that's potentially caused some other things. But, I know for a fact that, there's a firefighter that left. There's, a department head that left. They actually took a job for less money.
Because
in
the
their new
benefits
role.
were better.
But the benefits are better,
Yeah.
so their net pay is higher. So that's a real concern. And and you're competing, and not just with the private sector. That guy actually went to the state. So a state role paid more, or insurance was better on the state side than we were offering. So looking out for his family, I get it. So we need to figure that out and how we're going to do that, how we're going to recruit future employees, retain our existing employees. And continue to offer the services to the people of the town of Southwick that they expect and deserve. So that's going to be that big issue. That's the first article on the warrant. I think the second article is kind of a housekeeping one. A couple of years ago, we made an amendment to zoning and moved a bylaw out of zoning into a general bylaw, and it's really under the DPW, but they need the ability at times when there's a project of significance to have an outside consultant look at things, and it's usually funded by the developer. It's in our law under zoning, and when we split the bylaw out and moved it to a general bylaw and left part of it under zoning. Well, we didn't put the outside consultant part in the general bylaw, so this just adds that back.
Oh, it's got to fix something.
Yeah, it's kind of a touch up, right? And it's if you have a major subdivision coming in and or some other project where you need to hire an outside consultant to vet the engineering being done by somebody else. It's also brought home a little bit to us too. Is our former DPW director moved to the city to the north, where we're sitting right now, and a great guy, but he was also a PE, so we leveraged some of his skill set in what he did. Our new DPW director is not a PE, so we're going to need some outside expertise at times to look at certain things. So this gives us that mechanism to do it and have it funded by the proposal or by the developer or what have you, and have that looked at and reviewed. And it's it's always good to have an outside second set of eyes on things.
Sure.
So we're gonna have that capability coming out of that bylaw. And then the third item is, and we actually have a capital expenditures committee meeting tonight on this to get a lot more detail as to what this is. But this is part and parcel of our transition to regional dispatch is a factor in this, but not the driver.
Okay.
If we had kept dispatch in the town of Southwick, our radio system was reaching its functional end of life. We would have been replacing the console.
Yep.
We would have been putting repeaters and all the equipment back out on the poles and everything else. It's very, very expensive. It was a factor in the decision-making process, a minor factor, but a factor in the decision process to regionalize dispatch. And we've reached that functional end of life of the radio system. And it's compounded by the fact that our good friends at Verizon are end-of-lifing most of their copper wireline service.
Yep.
And we ride a lot of our dispatch the radio system rides on unused copper. What do you want to call it?
Dry pairs.
Dry pairs, thank you. Dry pairs between, they used to be called banana lines, right? But dry pairs between repeater sites. And it's been hard for a few years to find a good pair, and they are not putting new pairs on the poles. So they finally threw up their hands and go, yeah, we're done. So you can find what you can find, but we're not helping you anymore, as I understand it. I went to one meeting on this. So
no, they've abandoned copper all over the country.
Correct. And I know people have been getting on the residential side, people have been getting notices that they're getting out of the DSL business, they're getting out of this business. Blah, blah.
Yep.
So anyway, so we got to go to a new system. A lot of this radio system has been funded through the regional dispatch, through grants, through the 9/11
part of the grant
grants,
process, yeah.
Right. But brass tacks, and we're going to get
town usually has to have its part of it.
Yep, and kudos to Nina and the folks at Regional Dispatch and our public safety officials that have been bird dogging this. And we have a consultant that we've worked with for years on this. Basically, it's going to come down to about $200,000 to finish off the system.
I was the spearhead of the Westfield project when that came through, when it went to a regional combined and then regional dispatch. And years ago, that's almost 7-8 years ago, I think the project for Westfield to encompass the entire city, all departments, whatever that needed radios, I think was $1.7 million.
And that was a while ago.
That was about 7 or 8 years ago.
So at least double it, right? At least double
yeah,
it just
yeah.
in cost. And, we've had some great discussions with folks, and I think everybody's kind of added some value here. I had a discussion with the former chief of Southwick Police Department when, one of the guys came and said, by the way, we're going to charge you X dollars to have your equipment on our cellular tower. And I guess that's where my planning board experience came in, and I reminded them that they are subject to a special permit. And it doesn't work like that, because there was a recent court case that emphasized the fact that as condition of approval of a tower, absent anything else, you can't just say, oh, by the way, you got to reserve your best spot on the tower for our public safety, and it's free, and you can't ever charge us, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that, right? That's illegal. It's been found to be illegal, and probably rightfully so. But in Southwick, it's a special permit. And it's a conditional permit. There's give and take. Hey, you want a higher tower? Okay, what are you going to, what's the give for the take? And so
Right.
part of the negotiation is, okay, can we have a spot on the tower for public safety? Yes, you have to pay this much, or you don't have to pay this much, but we'll reserve this spot on the tower for you. It's usually not the
It's a height
optimal
level.
spot. Yeah, but so that they're subject to that special permit. And I said, okay, if you want to change that, good, go apply to the planning board under their new rules, or to modify your special permit to kick the public safety guys off because you have a contract that you executed, which is your special permit, and you're looking to change that, so there's a process. Well, that went away. So we preserve that, but there's a couple other repeater places we need to get to, and then we're going to have some wireless backhaul to connect those things.
Right, because you need it now.
Yep, and so we got to get that done, and we're on the cusp of that. It's $200,000.
Which, trust me, is a bargain.
I know, and we've gone back and forth with the contract and the providers and the vendors, and we've been very creative and done some neat things. I know they're buying a little box for one of the. I'm greatly oversimplifying a little box, a Connex box for the base of one of the towers to put the equipment, and they're taking over one.
Yeah,
that
it's called the
was already
shelter.
there.
Yeah.
And they've saved a bunch of money on all of that to get there, but we need to do this. I mean, public safety relies on that. For firefighters, for medics, for the police department, when they're in any portion of the town of Southwick, they need to be able to communicate amongst themselves,
Yep.
amongst the other departments, and amongst
with
dispatch to
dispatch.
make sure that we're bringing the resources, and we have the resources to combat whatever they're facing at that moment, and we cannot let that, be a problem. So
And that was the
that's an
thing
issue.
in our site process. We dropped some sites that we had for years because we couldn't come to agreements, and then we added sites that originally weren't possible, but because we were putting a microwave system in point to point, it now became possible.
Yep.
So that's And absolutely.
So that's going to go in front of town meeting. That's going to be another article, and then one that to me it was kind of surprising. Apparently to some it wasn't as surprising. Well, I'll just leave that like that. But a couple of weeks ago, maybe it's a month now, 3 weeks. There was an article on our agenda about a proposed moratoria on ground-mounted solar and battery energy storage systems. And I kind of, maybe I played the heavy here, but I asked the question of, where did this come from? I watched the planning board meeting. They haven't really been talking about this except in passing. And, usually a zoning bylaw, which this is, a moratorium on something that's allowed in, to stop something that you already have in your zoning. You have to go to town meeting, get a 2/3 vote. It's a zoning bylaw amendment. That should be proposed by the planning board. And so the planning board, their following meeting, met to send it to the select board to ask for a warrant article and then to hold a public hearing, which we immediately said, absolutely, go right ahead. Let's have this discussion. And they advertised the hearing. I think they might have got out a little ahead because I think they advertised it before we voted on it, but it's all good as long as they advertised it properly. They had their public hearing. It was actually last night, so if I'm looking a little more tired than usual, it was a late night meeting as well for the planning board. But they took public input on this. There seems to be some concern around. It's not the ground-mounted solar. Everyone can have their opinion on ground-mounted solar, on the value of that and the
I think the
cost
aesthetic
benefit.
is terrible.
We'll come to that in 1 second because I have my own opinion, which I'll gladly share. I'm never shy about sharing my opinion on that, on anything really. But the thing is, what's happening now is battery energy systems are becoming a thing, and they are today treated as an accessory to solar. So kind of, hey, you build your house and you put in a shed. That's an accessory use to your house, or you have a new car dealership and you also have a garage. That's an accessory use to selling cars, right? So now the battery energy is kind of it's come along with solar.
Right, like a Tesla wall or something.
Different. To be very clear, Peter, it's very different. If you're directly connected to the grid, that's where they're concerned. So you have a large, and by large,
Gotcha.
ground-mounted solar is 1,000 square feet of solar panels.
So
or more.
warehouse and then a warehouse storage unit for
Or someone comes and just to keep it simple, someone comes, they want to develop a 10-acre parcel, they want to put solar on it, and they want to have battery storage there. So they want to
On site.
charge up these batteries during the day, discharge the batteries back onto the grid at night, to keep power generation constant or whatever they're doing with it, right? Lower electricity rates, however, in theory, whatever they're talking about doing, right? But the problem is that the technology has gotten, by some people's opinion, have gotten out in front of the ability to deal with it. It becomes, the accessory use becomes the primary use by,
Right.
because, or a co-use, right? It's not just a solar field
It's
and we
as
got some
important,
batteries.
yeah.
Hey, we got a lot of batteries and we're going to charge them up with these solar panels. But it's also, Dan Alley's been very vocal on this. There was a proposed battery energy storage thing in Westfield that he was very vocal about, did a lot of research on.
It's the environmental impact.
The environmental impact. If something happens to one of these things, are we well equipped to deal with that and to deal with the repercussions of it in the immediate term of, hey, this thing is on fire. How do we put it out? To, okay, now we put all this foam and stuff on it. What did we do to the environment? To the smoke from these things hovers in the Pioneer Valley,
brutal,
and
yeah.
we are in a valley, and so this stuff is going to move around. And so it's not just a Westfield problem, it becomes an everybody problem in the valley. We need to understand that better. The fire chief was very vocal last night, and kudos to him. I was very proud of how he represented the Southwick Fire Department and our mutual aid partners as far as our ability to deal with these things on an emergent level. But there's still some discussion to be had about that. So what they're proposing is, unfortunately, the way the bylaw is written today is, with these batteries things as kind of accessory uses, the only way to prevent them until we get a better handle on the zoning, and they also want to talk about setbacks and aesthetics, to your point, is put a moratorium until they can get a better bylaw on the books. And so that's the proposal that's going to go to town meeting. They voted, I believe they voted at the end of the meeting last night to send a positive recommendation on the moratorium to town meeting, which is what you do for a zoning bylaw amendment, and needs 2/3 vote. And so we'll see how that plays out, because I think it's a little rushed in my opinion, but I understand the sense of urgency that they're developed because of what's happened around us. Agawam had something, Westfield had one that was withdrawn. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding these, and I think there needs to be more education and discussion about it. And I think, I'm going to sound, I'm not in favor of these things, that not knowing whatever's going on with them. I like more information until I make a rational decision about it. I've seen there are positives to these things. They lower emissions from power plants. They lower electricity rates. There was a story about...
You know what this is? This is 3 Mile Island. Because there was one big battery storage fire in California.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of fallout to it, and now everybody's panicked about it.
I liked how you used fallout in that sentence with 3 Mile Island, too. Very well done.
But it was both, because it rained down toxic metals into
no doubt.
wetlands nearby.
Yep. And, and I guess everything has a risk, and everything, you have to mitigate the risk to your best of your
What's
ability.
your tolerance level?
I mean, what did we just have out on the Cape, right? One of the windmills, one of the blades shattered and put, stuff all into the Cape Cod Bay, and it was slivers of carbon fiber, and that's it, and it has an environmental impact. Every time our modern way of living and the demand for electricity and energy in general is growing. And
what's your risk tolerance?
And
that's what it is.
100%, right? You have from emissions from power plants to whether the risk of nuclear, disposal of solar. Everything has a risk. You have to weigh those down and mitigate the risks as best as you can, and prepare for when something doesn't go exactly as planned. You can't sit there and bury your head in the sand
Sure,
and go,
this
is all going to be fine. It's all going to be fine, and you have to balance all that out. And a lot of building codes and fire codes and suppression systems and all these other things they're there for a reason. They exist. One of them. A lot of them exist because this happened, so now we have this, right? You have sprinklers in nightclubs because of the Station nightclub fire, right? You have certain safety things around power plants and other things. You have airbags in cars. All of these things came about to mitigate risk. So I think that's part of the discussion here, is to understand it, and let's get folks that know this stuff in front of our planning board and let them do a good job about crafting a proper bylaw. Let them work on the setbacks. Maybe it needs to be restricted for battery energy storage shouldn't be over the aquifer. Maybe it should be prohibited in the wellhead protection district. I don't know. That's a common sense thought, right? And that potentially protects water, especially if firefighting involved. And again, not my area of expertise. I'll defer to the folks that are really good at this, and that would be the ones actually putting out said fire if gosh forbid that ever happened. But when you put PFAS type containing stuff on a fire, it's going to find its way down.
Yep.
So where's down is our aquifer. We don't want that, right? So things like that. But then you also have the wind, and where do you situate that? I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts to it. It was a really good discussion last night. I'm glad that some people came out to hear the discussion about it. I think it needed to be aired and talked about rather than just to say we want to do this and not have some of the rationale and the explanation as to what folks were thinking about. And that's kind of the transparency and thoroughness that we need from government in general. And the more people know and the more they're educated on this, the better it is. I spent the better part of 2 weeks kind of studying some of this stuff to understand it better for my own state of mind to go to that meeting last night to understand what was being talked about. Because I was certain that someone was going to talk about a car fire somewhere and, how do you put those out? And it had nothing to do with the discussion last night.
No,
and
this is an order of magnitude way higher.
100%. But you follow the model. Like when electric cars first came out, it was a real concern. And fire departments had to catch up on how do you deal with a fire in a car, right? How do you disengage the high voltage battery to make it safe for a firefighter to extract someone from a car? Because those voltage rails ran right through a door, for example. So you go to cut the door and all of a sudden you hurt a firefighter. How do you put out a lithium fire, right? How do you keep batteries cool if they're in fire? How do you protect a car when you send it to the junkyard? All these things we've learned and adapted to. The fire department now carries special adapters on the truck to plug into the charge port that disconnect the battery, right? To make the car safe for the first responders themselves, to save the people in the car, and so on and so forth. That's the kind of educational process. And also the batteries, battery technology is changing. The types of batteries that they're making are changing to be, more energy dense, but also safer. Not a chemist, but, those things are going to happen. Eventually you'll get to solid state batteries, and that mitigates a lot of the risk.
That, yeah.
I mean, I remember 25 years ago when we were designing in a previous role, we were designing a laptop product for a customer, and we actually used this. We called it a storage cap at the time, but it's basically a solid state battery just to power the real time clock, right? Instead of having a NiCad battery or a small coin cell battery to power the battery, it was a cost saving play, but it was also an environmental play to not have that piece of stuff in the machine. But it was a tiny piece and it could power the battery for like 2 days. So really not that great for a laptop. If it was off for 3 days, it lost its mind. So, but that technology, now here we are 30 years down the road, that technology is maturing, and obviously everyone would love to get away from lithium and other chemicals in batteries because a chemical reaction that you're carrying around in a bag is never a great idea. So if you can store that energy,
well, and the way it's
state,
processed out of the ground is really harmful to the environment
and
as
again,
well.
mitigating risk, right? We talk about, you're burning coal or nuclear or you're burning nat gas or oil or what have you, and all the political and environmental costs of that. Lithium has its own set of political costs and environmental costs, right? It's all about weighing all that out, and it's a grand economic decision as well as an environmental one. And where you move the pollution to and from, right? An electric car doesn't magically, you plug it in and that electricity doesn't magically show up at the socket, right? That electricity is being generated somewhere.
I don't know.
Probably a little further along from our discussion, but
I've watched a couple of videos say there's devices that have been made that pull energy out of the air.
Well, correct. And Eversource buys the patents and buries it, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm
Absolutely.
making that part
No,
up.
that's the truth.
Mrs. Gallooni, please don't call me. I'm making a joke. So,
It's usually the federal government. But
I know, but I met the communications director for the area for Eversource after our
Gotcha.
smart meter hearing, and we had a lovely conversation. And she was a very nice person because I was very vocal about Eversource's process for kind of having a public information hearing or discussion about smart meters and educating the Southwick residents about what they're doing. And they wanted to schedule it the week after they started installing them. I said, that's a bad look. And she came to the meeting, and at the end of the meeting, literally it was like, hey, where's Doug Moglen? I want to meet Doug Moglen, who was talking all this stuff. And we both explained ourselves, and we agreed to have better communications going forward as to
There you go.
what each of us are doing. So I really did appreciate meeting her and having a conversation. So if chance slim that she watches this, but if she does, I was joking. So we're going to go to town meeting and have this moratorium, and I think they're going to go out to 2027 on the moratorium because they've got a big zoning overhaul that they're working on with Pioneer Valley Planning. They need to, they want to revisit a lot of our zoning bylaws. So this is going to, hopefully that'll be for May of 2026.
Yep.
And they're hoping May of 2027 at the latest. They'll have this solar piece layered on top of that. And I'm glad that they're looking at the zoning because, again, I had a ton of experience there, having, spent a good 10, 15 years on that planning board and coming through a lot of zoning changes. There's been a lot of court decisions over the years that, call into question some of our own zoning bylaws themselves as to how things are done, especially around development. The master plan has a lot to say about, what the people are looking for Southwick 2040. People that live in town have a lot to say also
sure, yeah.
about what they'd love to see and what they would love not to see. So, the planning board, your elected planning board, is going to have a lot to do with how
Yep.
that all works out and how, the Southwick Master Plan 2040 vision comes to actual, some of the bylaw changes they could make to kind of steer towards what those goals are. And, and one could argue, part of it is, energy and solar and energy conservation and environmental conservation. Again, we just talked about, there's a fine line to walk.
Yep.
We have this large ground-mounted solar bylaw that came in, I think it was 2013, to allow it. But the technology's changed, the equipment is changing, the accessory uses are changing. This battery energy storage wasn't a thing in 2013. Here we are 12, 13 years later. It's very different now. There's companies out there that do battery energy as a cost-saving measure, right? So there's a great article. It's a video. I watched it, and I shared it with some of the other select board members and others too. There's a town out east. I think they must have a municipal utility, but Caterpillar provides them these battery energy storage systems, and it's connected to ISO New England, and they moderate the battery charging, discharging like every minute. And there's times to charge, there's times to discharge to level the load on the power plants and all this other stuff. It's also a cost savings driver, because your peak demand for the year drives electricity rates for the rest of the year. And so on your hottest day with everyone running their air conditioners and at peak demand, and of course it's 100 degrees out, they discharge those batteries at the right crucial time to avoid a wicked peak up in demand, leveled off that demand, which caused the peak demand charge to be lower for the entire community for the year.
Wow.
And the economic models are different too. Again, this is probably not even select board territory. This is others' territory. But it's going to come into play as part of zoning and how you allow or don't allow these things. The economic model that I read about for this one from CAT was they basically give you the thing for nothing and split the savings with you. They just give it, here you go, here's the thing. You save $500,000, you cut us a check for $250,000. And when we're done with the project, we take our batteries away and recycle them. But so there's all kinds of different things, and we're seeing that. This battery energy storage is could be transformative for how, surge pricing and surge generation and, people still power up dirty plants at peak times. Well, if you can avoid that because you've got battery storage from solar, you avoid that and the environmental cost of that. And sometimes I don't want to weigh it out, and I'm not taking a position on it either way until I have more facts, because I don't know enough to know yet what's the right answer. And I'm really looking forward to talking to Dan Alley and some other folks that were very vocal in their opposition to what was being thought about for Westfield, and also the folks in Agawam that were talking about it. We'll learn from those folks as to what they were thinking and what they were hearing and what experts were telling them, and then let's put together a proper bylaw. And we'll see what happens at town meeting. It's a town meeting. It's going to be needs a 2/3 vote because it's a zone change.
Yep.
And the last piece of that is there's no denying that the demand for electricity is far outstripping our ability to generate it.
Oh, it has been for years.
And it comes down. The magic word today is 2 letters, is AI, and these data centers and hyperscalers and. Hold
That's
on.
only going to exacerbate the problem.
They're talking that it's the power demand for all of this AI and cloud services is magnitudes more. Not, electricity demand is going to grow 10%. It's magnitudes more than we're using today. And how do you get there, right? How do you do that? I don't have the answers for that. And it has other environmental aspects to it too. Water, right? Land, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these large data centers, I know there's talking about
Cooling
having
systems.
the cooling and the energy demand and the water demand, because they use a lot of water to cool them. Smart person right now is somehow in the business of figuring out how to reuse that water.
Yeah,
right?
regenerative.
You put it back into the water system. Or
Maybe
you
the
somehow
loss
find
is
a way
only
to-
a couple percent.
I don't know. And I'm sure there's smarter people than I working on that, because it seems to me, because it's trillions of gallons of water. And water is a finite resource. In the future.
Could be though. NASA's figured out ways to make the same amount of water go from here to Mars.
Yep. I honestly believe, maybe not in my lifetime, but in outlying lifetimes, wars will be fought over water, right? Wars have been fought over oil for a generation or 2, 3 now. Wars will be fought over water in coming years. And so we have to be cognizant of that. We're blessed in Southwick. We have an aquifer here. We have a very clean, abundant supply of water. That doesn't mean we waste it. We have to be smart stewards of it. And they're having a lot of discussions on the water department about that. On how to be good stewards, and they do a fantastic job today. And we just always need to be good stewards of that and continue to be good with that. So I'm really, the battery energy thing, I think we've talked that to death. That's going to be there. The public radio we talked about, and the contractors and insurance. So that's town meeting. So January 13th it's going to be at the regional school. I don't know if that's going to be in the auditorium or in the gymnasium. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they're expecting for a turnout.
Probably depends on the number of people that show up.
Well, no, unfortunately, I think we have to prepare one or the other. So we're either going to have a few people in the big gym, or, it always works out. Like last town meeting, we were at close to the capacity of the auditorium, right? We were bringing chairs into the front row. We were thinking of putting more people on the stage. So we're going to probably prepare. Maybe we'll bring a bazooka to a knife fight. I don't know, but we want to make sure that everybody that wants to come to town meeting and participate in town meeting has the right to have their voice heard, has the right to a vote. And, you certainly don't want to continue a town meeting because you couldn't fit everybody in the room.
Right.
So we're going to make sure we do that right. I'm sure, moderator St. Jacques has been talking about that and planning on that. We closed the warrant Monday, so there's no more articles coming onto the warrant from here. So we know what we have. We'll be able to get it posted, warn the inhabitants as it is in the bylaw, and have people come out. And I'm certain that the fire and the police and the other town employees that are stakeholders, all employees are, but every resident in town is a stakeholder to this, because when we raise and appropriate money at the town budget, that comes from the property tax and other tax revenue sources, right? So that's where we have to be with that. So everybody's got a right to speak, and everybody's got a right to be heard and have a discussion, and then a full and thorough vote on the matter. So we'll be having that meeting January 13th. I alluded to it during our discussion about the outside consultants, but we have a new DPW director. it's a promotion for his name is Richard, but I always call him Richie. I called him Richard when I appointed him. I said that'll be the last time I say it. So Richie Bozak's going to be our new DPW director. He's been a long-time assistant DPW director, so he's got a lot of knowledge. He's got a lot to learn, and a lot of tasks to take on. Big shoes to fill. Randy Brown was a fantastic DPW director. Westfield got a great guy in him. And Richie's going to step in and fill that role, and he's going to do a great job at it. I want to also shout out to John Goddard. John was our longtime town planner. I probably kept him in his seat at the town planner for a year longer than he should have while we were looking for a replacement town planner, because that got wrapped up in an economic development director discussion too. But John is a great guy, and he's very thorough, very thoughtful. He goes through he thinks everything through. He covers all his bases, and we had a long discussion when we were going through this transition. He's going to be very supportive of Rich, and bring a lot of his knowledge and expertise. He comes from the land management kind of background, so he's got a lot of smarts to bring to the table, and so they're going to be a great team over there at DPW.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I'm really looking forward to it. Richie has a lot of operational experience, and John's got a lot of other experience. Two of them, obviously Richie's going to be the director, but they're going to get along great. They get along great now. They're going to do a great job for the people of the town of Southwick. So I'm really looking forward to having that duo kind of take over the DPW, and heading into budget season next year will be their budget, and what we're going to do, because we still got a lot of work to do there. Roads are always a topic. We're waiting. We just got back the beta study on the roads. They're going to come in and make a presentation to us early in the new year. It kind of ratifies what we were thinking. The roads are terrible and they need work. They have to, and they characterize dollar signs around all of it. I was surprised by the dollar amount not being higher, but then you start reading the small print and said, oh, this doesn't include any drainage or tree work. It's just literally, square foot of paving. So, okay, you've got to magnify all that out. But it did prioritize road conditions by road, by mile, by usage, by type of road. It's going to be very beneficial for the select board and DPW to put our collective heads together and figure out if we're going to bond for some road work or we're going to continue down the path we were taking. That's going to be a very vigorous discussion in the next year, I'm sure, to get where we need to go. We know that the roads need work. There's no escaping that. Just driving anywhere in town will remind you of that. But having the beta study is going to help us prioritize some of that work and it becomes very apolitical, right? The numbers don't lie. This road is terrible. It needs to be redone, and it gets this many cars per day.
Yeah, roads don't care about your politics.
Right, exactly. And it's not who lives on this road or what's this or what's that. This
condition.
Is literally, you take it and go, okay, here's the dollars we have, here's the road projects, click, click, click. And you have to balance the work. You can't just pave every major thoroughfare every 5 years. You've got to get into those side streets where people do all the living and dying in our town. Right, you've got to get to those. There's roads out there that haven't been touched since the 1940s, and get those, resurfaced or repaved or whatever needs to be done over there. And there's newer roads that we need to do maintenance on so that they last another 10 or 20 years. So it's a balancing act. Again, we have to work on that, and that's something we're going to take care of. The other thing I brought forward last week under new business, to carry under old business, and we're going to talk about that in January, I believe, if not the 22nd, is we're thinking about putting a digital sign at the regional school, at the entrance. So right now we have a digital sign at Berkshire Bank.
Which is on its last legs, according to somebody I know.
Correct, and we've had it. It's served its purpose. It's done a great job. We'll continue to have it. The sign technology has changed so much since we put that in. What you can get for, relatively short money, is amazing. There's a community aspect to it, right? That's a major intersection point of traffic flow through the town, especially east to west, right? Obviously, having it out there on 57. at the schools, the number of people coming and going from the schools every day.
Yep.
Puts it there to be able to have, town-sponsored or town notices on that sign, plus the school sign, whatever school information they want to present. But also if there's something emergent that you can, display stuff on that sign. Hey, town meeting tomorrow, or there's a boil water thing in effect, or whatever it is. You name
sure.
the
Yeah,
emergency,
yeah.
you can put it up. Or, hey, town meeting Tuesday. Oh, come on,
Yep.
pulling into school. I didn't remember. I didn't know. Now I know. Okay. So they have a bunch, it came to me from a school committee member. It's a good use of PEG money, potentially a good use of PEG money. We're going to talk about that as the select board in the coming weeks. I think as early as our next meeting. They got a couple of quotes and some general ideas of what they want to do. So we're going to discuss it. I think it's a decent idea, and it's worth exploring and worth discussing on how to do it. And it'd be a good collaboration with the schools, right? The schools are on town property. The schools are a leaseholder of almost a forever lease from the town. So it's eligible for the PEG funding. And it might be a good use of it to try to increase awareness of certain things going on in town and call certain things out. So they've got a couple different, they're going to come in and talk about that some more and have a good discussion about it. So I'm really looking forward to having that. And, we've been, we don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but there's a lot going on with Channel 15. And,
Yep.
One of the select board members, Russell Anderson has his thoughts on that, and he kind of made a proposal or a presentation to the select board that we need to discuss more.
Yep.
You and I have talked about this. You guys are going to come in front of the select board and talk about what we're doing today and where we can go and
Where it
what we
came
should
from.
be- where it came from. And I think, it's very important. I think the Channel 15 in our town, our collaboration with you guys, we've done a lot of great things. Can we improve? Absolutely. Is it
Sure.
going to take money? Absolutely.
Yep.
Should we be doing things differently? Probably, right? But let's have that discussion rather than, we need to have more of a discussion than just kind of a...
Yeah, don't just
a
chuck it
cursory-
out.
100%. And, we talked about, and I'm being cognizant of the time here, we've talked about, on the board, we kind of kibitzed back and forth about, how different cities and towns are doing meetings, right? Some
Yeah,
cities
sure,
and
yeah.
towns have a full broadcast department, right? And they produce, and I hate to use the term because they produce their town council meetings or select board meetings or school board meetings. Those meetings aren't meant to be produced. They're meant to be watched. And they're
Right.
meant to be... And
They're meant to be covered.
covered, and I've been a big proponent of this. It's the hill I die on, right? Is when we started doing the hybrid part of meetings, and how you get there is fine. I don't care. We're using the OWL and some other technology. Others are doing different ways to do it, but we're able to have board members be remote if they need to. Someone's traveling on business, or they're taking care of a sick kid, or what have you, and they can join a meeting remotely versus not being a participant in the meeting. That's huge. Public participation, remote participation. I think it's important. I like to have the interactivity at times. Sucks getting Zoom bombed, but it happens. But I like having the interactivity. I've watched other cities and towns in the Commonwealth and elsewhere in the country where they just broadcast to YouTube. So you can go on YouTube, or you can watch on your local cable channel or via the web.
Yep.
You get a stream, but it's not interactive. And all you can do is yell at your TV or yell at your laptop. I like
But
the interactivity piece of it. I'd like to maintain that.
I found that the broadcast sometimes gets people motivated to start being involved in town government too.
100%. And I think we've seen that, and and hence, getting back to the zoning thing of a week or two ago, I was surprised that there was no discussion. This all of a sudden shows up on an agenda, and an amended agenda heading into a meeting. That's not the way we run our government in the town of Southwick, right? We've been, I've been very vocal about, and I've been very critical, frankly, of certain boards and commissions in our town that continue to push back against, even if you don't want to have a hybrid meeting, record your meeting in
Yep.
audio and video so people can see the expression. People call me all the time and say, "Hey, Doug, we want you to come play in our card game." I'm like, what? I'm not a big card player. I don't have a lot of time to play cards. And they go, no, we really want you to come. I go, all right, come on. What is it? Go, well, we watched some of the select board meetings, and you have a wicked tell. And he says, your right eyebrow moves to about the top of your forehead when you're mad or surprised or you're biting your tongue. And he goes, so we're going to have a card game Tuesday. Bring all your money. So, but I think there's a lot to learn. And so kidding aside for a second, there's a lot to discern when you listen and watch a meeting versus listening to just an audio recording.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And the technology's there. It's in every conference room now. Have that audio and video recording.
Yep.
Let people watch it on YouTube the next day if they can't take it in. Heck, I watch almost every board and commission meeting that happens in the town, usually on YouTube, a day or two later if I can't be there live and in person.
Yeah, because you want to know what's going on.
100%. And okay, I'm on the select board. I'm supposed to do that more than the average Joe, I guess. But you know what? People should be able to watch your planning board. They should be able to watch your board of assessors, your water commissioners, your cultural council. And I'm not picking on any one board or commission. The ones who I've picked on vocally in the past that refuse to offer the video side of the meetings, they know who they are, right? But I think it's great to have that, and it's also part of preserving history too, right? You've got an audio-visual record. The minutes don't always tell you the flavor of what was going on. You watch a meeting, you get an understanding of what happened in that meeting. So,
absolutely.
So here we are. We talked for a solid hour already, and I covered
As
everything
usual.
else. Well, and I want to, real quick on the way out, I want to congratulate the Civic Fund for their Winter Forest Craft Fair that they had this past weekend.
That was really cool.
It was great to see you there as well.
Yep.
We thought we were gonna. They thought they were going to have some issues parking cars and stuff. It turned out to be a non-issue.
I noticed people came in waves. Yeah,
absolutely. It ebbed and flowed. It was a great new venue for them to show off that resource that they're making available. And it was well attended. It was great to see the kids see Santa.
Yep.
It was great to see a lot of people that I hadn't seen in a while got to catch up and say hello. And for everybody that came down, and the craft vendors did well, and everybody had a good time. And I thought it was great. And so hats off to them for executing another well done event. And to have a little healthy competition with the tree decorating thing, and to see all the town businesses and residents and groups that participated to donate and decorate a tree to benefit the Civic Fund. There's so much stuff that they do. They've got their toy drive going on. I'm not going to shill for them this week, but they just do a lot of stuff in town, and it's a welcome resource. The town doesn't have all the resources to go and fund all these things that we would like to do. Private organizations like the Civic Fund need to step up and do them, and the Lions Club and the Rotary and all those guys do a great job of that too.
Absolutely.
And it makes our community what it is, and it's so appreciative. So, on that, I want to wish everybody, a happy, healthy, safe holiday season. And we're done for the year. So have a great new year, and we'll see you on the other side.